meditation and yoga, and I did a little bit of samadhi practice. Oh, how are we going with that? All good. So
Trust me, I'm a doctor.
Oh, good.
No thanks.
Not for long.
Not my experience.
Yeah. So and then we did. And then I talked about this idea of selfing, because in order really to work on trying to become selfless, first of all, we really need to know, what is it that we cling to, which, causes the selfing, and it's our ego. So I asked you to sort of think about what is the definition of yourself. So any feedback on that? What were your thoughts?
I found that really good, right? That whole exercise, because it's not often that you think. I'm happy to share mine. It's not often that you think about the unconscious label, right? So, and I even acted it out over breakfast. I've always been a Martha, not a Mary. Do you know what that means?
No.
Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, and Martha was busy getting him lunch and so that is a thing that I do. I step up to help in that way, so that's a thing that I do unconsciously, so to speak. And I'm righteous. I know everything.
Good. So it's good to identify that.
I'll do it.
Maybe you think you know everything and you don't.
Well, that's what our thing's about. That's it.
That's your learning.
That's
But if you feel dukkha, if you feel contraction, often it's tied to this, I'm right, that's why. And then it makes you feel contracted. I've got to step up, I've got to do this. It makes you feel contracted. Now, doesn't mean you can't do actions when you finally give up self, as we've talked about. You can still do stuff, but you see them as actions. People will say, I feel like the universe is acting through me, or God is acting through me. It's like you're selfless, but you're still acting. That's what they sort of say it feels like. And anyway, any other feedback from that exercise?
I think for me, I realised how much I've transitioned or am transitioning this year. Like, really, I have had a facade of, being happy and helpful and generous and all these things. And like this year has been a total deconstruction of all that. And then at the moment, there's just this really comfortable emptiness. And I'm happy to sort of naturally let it rebuild into whatever it may, or might not need to rebuild. But at the moment, I'm just happy to be nothing to anyone or anything, just be. And I have no concern about how it comes across really, and I'm just, there's just no facade. It's just there's no facade. It's just don't mind how I come across or what people think, or if I'm helpful or not helpful. I'm just not.
Sounds like you're awake
in that space.
It's wonderful.
So it feels good.
Yeah, no, it feels like a weight has been just left.
Even although you've made such a big decision, and
but that
decision,
decision,
even feeling like that is
Dan,
wonderful.
if you go to a town and you meet the people, the decision to move out of the town goes hand in hand with the change of person, because they all put her up there because she's doing such good work in the town,
Yeah, well,
so
there's always causes and conditions, and that will always be the case, because that is how the universe works, is on causes and conditions.
And it's interesting because some of those qualities I'll probably merge into,
sure, but
without any intent. Like it's whatever it merges into, will be whatever. But it's not for any reason. Whereas before, everything had a gain, self gain from it, and now I don't need or want that gain at all.
Yeah.
So some of the qualities might be still present or might come back, but for a different reason.
Yeah. real basic stuff. Like we might sort of feel addicted to a good rice curry, and finally we, let that go. But it doesn't mean that when we have a rice curry we don't enjoy it. That habit is still there, but you're just not a slave to it anymore. You don't care if you never have a rice curry, for the rest of your life, because that's just how it is. But if you do have it, you enjoy it. So those qualities will come back. You don't lose your knowledges or your habits or anything like that. It's just you don't care if your character comes back or not. Probably will, and that's fine. But if it doesn't matter.
I've got something as well. I think it's helpful because I've got like this story I tell myself, and for years I've been trying to find the why or the reason for that story, and that probably just emphasizes the story. Where now if I can just realize the story, I can just let it go instead of trying to figure out why I created that story. Which over the years, trying to figure out why I created it just probably emphasizes and cements the story more. If I can just let it go as a story, I can just move on and drop it.
Yeah. So in counselling, we would try and work out why that story is and all of that. And so it can be a pathway, but the ultimate pathway is just drop the whole thing.
Yeah.
Drop the whole thing. Be done with it. Don't really care where the story came from.
Yeah.
It's just that I know any story is going to give me dukkha. Sure, some stories give less dukkha and more sukha, and some stories are full of dukkha, but they all contain dukkha at some point. So just let the whole thing go, and that's transcendence. And that's what we're here for. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I was horrified how, for my whole life, how hard I've been on myself.
Very good.
Till today. I mean, I'm not saying I dropped it today, but I had this huge realization that when we talked about stories from the beginning, I thought stories like projecting out or listening to other people's stories, and in time the transformation has been when you're with people, you nearly want to say cut the story, because you can recognise it so quickly that they're going into a story that's wasting their energy, their time, and they're talking to whatever. So, and then I don't know when it was, I realised that the most important thing, I think it's in a coaching session, said this to Trudy on the way and Ray on the way here. The main stories is what you're telling yourself. That's where it's really, for me, it's very painful. So that's been, I just recognise that it's been with me all my life, a tag, so that's what I want to change.
Yeah, so you have to keep noticing and telling yourself a story and saying, does this feel good at the moment? Do I feel expansive? Do I feel at ease? And if the answer is no, I feel contracted, it's because of the story. And the way to get more expansive and more at ease and more at peace is just drop it. So you have to keep reminding yourself every time a story comes up, is this creating dukkha? Yes, it is. So why do it? Drop it.
So is it like holding a ball or holding something? When you say drop it, is it like recognising going like that? Is it that easy? And that's very...
That is a metaphor the Buddha used 2,005 years ago. He said it's like holding a hot coal. We're holding this hot coal, but we don't want to let it go because it glows and we want it and it's burning us the whole time. And we can't let it go. But when we do, relief, absolute relief. So that's
it sounds simple.
a metaphor. Yeah, exactly.
Wish it was that simple.
If you achieve this, you'll be in 0.0001% of the population on Earth, because not everybody else is walking around with a story and they're trying to make their story go the way they want it and go the way that society seems to want them to do it, so that they can tell their good story to other people and make their ego bigger. We're all about trying to make our ego bigger, not realizing that it's the ego that is causing us all of this contraction and dukkha. So the Buddha, when he, according to his life story, saw suffering when he left the palace, and he renounced and he says, I just can't live knowing that old age, sickness and death is in store for everyone, including me, and I'm a prince, and and so he left his family and he went to study with the most famous teachers at the time, the yogis in India. And one teacher taught him how to meditate, and he meditated incredibly deeply up to what they say the 6th or 7th jhana, which is incredibly deep meditation. And the second teacher taught him to go even further into the 8th jhana. And when you go into absorption like that, you leave behind the self. You leave behind the self. And so you go into a state of complete and utter happiness and bliss. But when he came out of jhana, he was still a body. So it didn't satisfy him. And what the teachings were at that time, and still are today in Hinduism, really, a lot of Hindus, not all of them, they believe in this purification of the body to become one with God, one with Brahma. So you have Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. No, that's not right. Brahma, Vishnu and one other. And but Brahma is the God, and so they try to sort of forget the self and merge into God. They want their Atman, which is the self, their kind of soul. They have this idea of a soul. If they can purify the soul enough, it will become one with God. So that's what the idea was at the time, and it's easy because when you go into arguments and when you go into desire, and I want this and I want status and I want good food and I want comfort, it's clearly we're making this self, So it's easy to see that they said, well, if that makes the self, then we need to deny the self. And so Buddha went into 6 years of denial, and there's statues of him, and he's just skin and bone. His whole ribs are sunken in, and you can see every single rib. And he meditated for 6 years, and he was eating just bits of grass and a few odd bits of rice. And whenever anyone offered him anything substantial, he says, "No, I have to deny myself so that I can purify myself and become one with God." And at the time, after 6 years of doing this, it just wasn't working. And he had 5 disciples who were all doing this with him. So there were 6 of them in the forest. And there's a famous story where he saw a boat floating by, and on the boat there was a musician and his master, and the master was teaching this young student about the musician, and he said, if the string is too tight, the violin or whatever, the guitar won't play. But if the string is too loose, also it won't play. So the string has to be just tight enough. And then that was the realization of the middle way. And he realized that going into, a denial of the self was just another form of self. Just another form of self. And so he realized that was just as bad as just becoming, overly selfish and trying to get everything. So then he accepted food, and his disciples who had been with him for 6 years were incredibly heartbroken because they believed their teacher had finally succumbed to temptation. And so he sort of got kicked out, and he went off and meditated by himself. And the night of his enlightenment, he had lots of realizations, but ultimately it culminated in this realization of there is no self. There is no self. And so that's what the Buddha taught. And that is the defining characteristic of Buddhism that separates Buddhism from all other traditions, is this idea that ultimately there is no self. Whereas most other traditions still believe in some sort of a soul or an ego or some sort of an Atman that needs to be purified and become one with the divine. And he said, no, there's none of that. There is nothing. You can search more deeper and deeper and deeper, and you will eventually find nothing. And that's what created the awakening. So, this teaching really, it is a bit of a Buddhist teaching, and it is sort of the thing that defines Buddhism. Now you'll see in Advaita Vedanta, for example, I've studied that, and they really point, and they get 99.999% there, and you could almost say they actually get there in Atmananda's teachings, if you've read any books from Atmananda. But he sort of still describes it in a sort of parlance of awareness becoming one with the universe. And so there's still some substantiality there. Nevertheless, if you get there, you are effectively beyond suffering, which is what we want anyway. So who cares really if you go that final step? But we probably, I certainly would want to sort of go the whole journey, so to speak, if I was to achieve that level of awakening. So that gives you a sort of a background of the tradition. So that's why, as I said, it is really the most productive and probably the most sort of tangible thing you can do is to keep looking for, where do I keep creating a self? Where do I keep selfing? Where do I create a story? And then ask yourself, is that story real? So this is sort of the exercise that you just do over and over and over and over again, and gradually as you say, no, it's not real. No, that was just made up. No, it's a figment of my imagination. No, it's a figment of their imagination that they are projecting onto me, and I've taken it. Gradually, the self gets less and less and less, and as Kathy explained so beautifully, she feels relieved, and it feels like a burden has been dropped. So we should look at situations and be interested particularly in situations where there is a big self. Now, where is there a situation where self is very, very evident? And it is, one of them is when in blame. So blaming others or self-blame. Yeah? So that's a good one where the self really reifies itself. It's your fault. No, it's not my fault. It's Trudy's fault, or whatever. There's a defense mechanism, or sometimes with self-blame, we just go on, oh dear, I've done that and I've done that. Yeah. So the Rob Bayer, in his book, talks about ways. He gives some examples of how can we deal with that strong selfing. So we'll talk about blame here, but it could be anything. It could be anytime there's any sort of story.
Yeah, I was going to ask what are examples of selfing? And then you start to say you need to look at what is
selfing. Well, it could be anger. I'm angry at this. I'm jealous of this. I hate this. I desire this. I want this. So basically any emotion has some selfing going on.
Yeah.
If it's not love and compassion or peace, if it's anything other than those, then it's selfing.
Yes.
And even love and compassion at this stage will have selfing in it. But blame is one where it sort of is really kind of in your face. So that's one we can do. Now, one way to work with it is to notice that as the thing you blame yourself for comes about through many, many causes and conditions. And Rob the Bayer says, now start by splitting it down into the inner present cause and the outer present cause, and the inner past cause and the outer past cause. So that's a way of starting to split up a situation into what are the present factors that were involved in me doing this thing. So, there are some inner factors. What are the outer factors? Well, there are some outer factors. What are the and then you start to split up into 4 different causes for this one thing, right?
Wouldn't habit cover all those 4?
Well, habit, I would say, is an inner past cause. Yeah?
It's a habit that you just keep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a cause that you've built up in the past. And so that has that momentum of, coming to the fore.
So what would the outer be in balance to that habit?
So let's take an example here is when you don't empathetically listen to a friend. But let's take one that's current, shall we? And I was thinking of this today. So breakfast was late. Yeah. So who's to blame? Tash and I are to blame. We're the organisers. So I'm sure Tash has some self-blame going on. So if you're listening to this, Tash, maybe you don't. Maybe you took it all under your wing and didn't bother you in a bit. But I also probably think, in retrospect, I probably should have said something during yoga and said, "Oh, Tash, why don't you, pop down and start doing this?" But I thought, I did think, it sounds like, I just trust that she had everything under control. I said, well, she must know what she's doing. It'll probably only take her 5 minutes. So.
She thought it was 7:15, but it was really 8:15.
So she lost track of time.
Yes.
So that's an example. Now, does it do any good for either Tash or I to wallow in self-blame?
No.
But we could easily do that, couldn't we? We could wallow for the whole rest of the retreat in, oh God, those people are going to go and they're going to, whatever. I'm going to start telling stories about myself. Likewise with you guys, does it help you guys to feel bad and feel put out and blame us? It doesn't help anything, does it?
No.
So a wise person would just let it go. But let's say, for example, I can't let it go. It was my fault. I should have said something. Yeah. So I'm struggling I'm trying to meditate now. I'm going, right, just going strong. I can't, I should have said this, I should have said that. So how do I tackle it? Yeah? So the first is, what's the inner present cause? So what was happening to me at the time, which, was the inner present cause? Well, I was trusting and feeling confident that Tash had things under control, and I assumed that she knew the time, and so there was a passivity, which was an inner present cause. So there's a reason why I didn't say anything. Yeah, the outer present cause, everyone else was very relaxed or whatever, and nobody seemed bothered at the time. And so there was no sort of instigation to sort of say anything. And Tash had actually told me, everything's all prepared, it's all ready. So, and it was, the outer sort of everything was there, except really for the eggs and stuff like that. So that's another cause. Now the inner past cause, well, the inner past cause for the action, because in every other retreat, the retreat centre always creates the meal, so there's no precedent for having to remind people to do this.
Can I say at Philibora, when you had that look on your face when we got to the gate? And no, they expected us the next day.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. That was a big. Whoa.
So you haven't learned.
Yeah.
You repeated the pattern.
So
today.
So my pattern is I'm
sorry.
very trusting.
You're easygoing. You're easygoing.
There's the past cause.
Yeah.
So there's a past inner cause of this relaxation, and it should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She'll be right.
She'll be right. And it was.
And it was.
It
And
was.
it was.
And it was alright.
And it was.
And it was alright. It was alright.
It was
You know?
great.
You know. So
Wonderful.
therefore, it's a good outer past cause.
Yeah.
But also, let's say that I'm really worried about this, and I could look at what are the inner past causes that made me feel self-blame you know, this time. So this won't be a one-off thing. If I'm blaming myself, there'll be a history of me blaming myself, and the inner past cause could maybe feel like I'm inadequate. I'm not adequate enough to run a retreat. So there could be self-doubt there, or you know, or you could, you know, I'm lazy, or you know, I'm too lazy to have said anything, or you know, we can sort of blame. So there are these inner self causes. So there's these patterns. Now, if I realise I don't want to feel dukkha when something happens, I then need to think, well, there's selfishness in there. I've got a self made up of I'm not good enough, I'm too lazy, I'm not on top of things, something like that.
What if it worked in opposite and you were a perfectionist and anal and just annoying everybody?
Exactly.
Have you got
So then you'd have dukkha around, oh, things aren't right, things aren't right.
Right.
And you would feel that dukkha, and if you wanted to use these methods, you would think to yourself, well, I have a past cause of being a perfectionist. So that carries that momentum through, and I have a present inner cause. Okay? So when you break it up into all of these causes and conditions, you can see that me having self-blame has many causes and conditions. So it's not like I should necessarily feel like, in a way, it was sort of inevitable. There's a cause and effect relationship there leading up to all of this. Now, what's interesting is you can break those causes down into further causes. So you could say, well, it was impressed on me as a young person that perfectionism is important.
Yeah, there you go.
Society expects, when I say 8 o'clock breakfast, society expects it to be on the plates at 8 o'clock. You know, in Thailand, it would never be on the plates at 8 o'clock. You would never have breakfast at the time that they say. You know, it just would not happen. You would be just shocked if things happened on time in Thailand. But so the causes have causes, and then those causes have other causes. The reason society is like that in Australia is because we have causes coming from the UK generally, and that's where it came from. And those causes have causes because of
poverty,
whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you start to see there's an infinite web of causes and conditions, and so
are we looking at that, or are we just happy to drop it? Like if there's dukkha, are we going to go and ask all those questions? Or?
Yeah, so if you can drop it, you just drop it. Okay. But a lot of people, if you can, but
easier said than
Yeah,
done.
but where do I fit? Like, I didn't even notice breakfast was late.
Neither did I.
No,
I just thought we're having breakfast at
it'll be
some
really
time,
true.
and
Well, see, there you go.
Didn't bother me.
But show that.
Pete's
I
got a
noticed,
schedule.
can I say, I noticed it, and at first I was a bit angry. Why isn't Peter organised this? He's been doing so many treats.
Blame.
No, not blame. Hang on. However,
You let it go.
that's because I'm a perfectionist and
Yeah.
also I'm observing. However, halfway through, I let it go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it was the best thing that ever happened because
Exactly.
We all flowed.
and everyone flowed. And
Yeah.
if you had come in and cracked it
Ah.
and said
Tash would have run out the door. We would have all been
we
cooking.
would all be. It has an ongoing
ripple
rippling
effect.
effect.
So
So the
now-
blame for you becomes everyone is affected.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to say is, even if I had cracked the whip or whatever, there are causes and conditions for why I did that. So it's not really me.
yeah.
There's many, many causes and conditions. So even if I did that, you know, it's easy to go, well, Peter's a very, stern, overbearing type of person. But then that's you creating a self in Peter, whereas actually Peter's just a whole lot of causes and conditions.
Yeah.
So you can see how breaking things down into causes and conditions gets rid of selfing.
Yeah.
Gets rid of selfing in oneself and others. So Eventually, we see that the whole thing is a web of interconnected causes and conditions, and that's just the flow of the universe. And we are simply that. There's no self here. We're just a product of causes and conditions.
As others are. Then your compassion jumps in there.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
you've got to have
think
a fix
eventually I like what you say, that it's a process and a training process, because eventually you don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to go through your brain. It's just an awareness that there's causes and conditions to this, so it's not important, so just drop it.
Exactly.
So it doesn't even have to pass through your brain as you
That's
think.
right. Eventually, it becomes so ingrained in you that everything just becomes causes and conditions, and you just
That's
flow
really
through
good.
life, and self never arises.
Very
You know, but this teaching, as I'm assuming, that self is still coming up for people here, and so we're trying to come up with a whole lot of methodologies of how do we drop the self if we can't just let it drop by itself, or it never comes up. If it never comes up, or you can drop it easily, then you don't need to be on this retreat really, because you already understand selflessness, and you already intuitively are selfless.
That would annoy other people who aren't, that you're associating with, that aren't in alignment with that. Because if you just went, oh, well, so that's who I am.
Yeah, but that's
It's a cause.
well.
People want you to take responsibility for your causes.
What's their problem? It's
Yeah.
not yours.
Lead by example.
Don't hang out with
Yeah.
those people.
So, a couple of things. That's their self coming to the fore and causing them dukkha. Doesn't cause you dukkha. But secondly, like I said, it doesn't necessarily flow that you would be this kind of, oh, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to sit here because everything I do is empty. You may think that at this stage, but if you meet many enlightened people, they're very active. They do a lot of stuff, but they do it with no story behind it. So not all awakened people are like that. Most people are very, very effective, and so you wouldn't say that about them.
I just put it down to all your years of meditation that you're so relaxed about breakfast being late.
Well, what could he have done about
No,
that?
I just meaning that you're calm anyway. Like even in Billabora, someone else at that gate, because I was in the front seat,
I would have had a break.
would have had a bloody panic attack.
I would have had a
Not
break.
panic attack, but would have had a meltdown about it.
No.
I'm being facetious. Saying
No, well,
that was, I thought because you're.
Well, it is true. I mean,
Maybe
it is true. Like I was as a teenager, and as in my early 20s, I was very emotional, and I've done lots and lots and lots of work on myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm, effectively, I don't take anything on. I do see things as just all causes and conditions, and I do have faith that everything will work out. And even if things don't work out, they don't work out. That's still working out. It's still
works.
It's still, if everything is disastrous, then so be it.
I think that was a good lesson, because the water wouldn't boil on that little thing, so you can't make the water boil any quicker than
No.
the water's going to boil. So,
Non-attachment.
Yeah.
So how could we have changed it? Well, I told her to put the lid on the pot. That'll make it quicker, and she did that.
No, you do it an hour beforehand.
We'd be still waiting now if the pot lid didn't go on.
Without sidetracking the conversation, this is similar to like the theory of like there's no free will, because it's all, everything we do is all just the story, like there's all our previous actions, and we just do what all the web is programmed to happen at that time.
Yeah.
Is that the Matrix?
No, Corey Allen goes on about how there's no such thing as free will.
Yeah.
Because
So-
it's all just
happening.
it's all
Just
just
happening.
your experience. Everything's all sort of
Even Ray putting his hands up is like preordained. It's all through causes and conditions of an infinite causes and conditions. Now, what happens with all of this Buddhist stuff, and what happens with people, is you go, oh my God, so there's no free will. So what you do is you jump to this extreme, okay? And for time, that's correct. For time, it'll help you to get rid of this idea that I'm responsible for everything. But actually, in Buddhism, everything comes back to the middle. So there's a sort of free will. Yeah? There's a sort of free will, but it's just not your free will. Yeah. Okay? So that's why, but we can't help to jump from extreme to extreme. So, you know, at some point in this retreat, you might go, see, are you saying, or, so if I get this right, nothing exists here. You know, there is nothing here. Okay? And that's what they call the extreme of nihilism. Okay? But nihilism is an extreme that is too far. And Buddhism is in the middle. And so we go, but either it exists or it doesn't. We as a conscious mind can't cope within the middle. Like this cup, it's either there or it's not there. It can't be both there and not there at the same time. And Buddhism says, yes, it is. That's actually how it does exist.
I'm picking a cup up, but it doesn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah, but it doesn't not exist. Clearly it doesn't not exist.
Yeah.
You know, it's not there. So this is what you have to grapple your minds around with, is this middle way. Yeah?
But you can see, if you took it in a practical sense, that's saying everything in moderation. Like, look at something like when people could do a diet fad or go on Jenny Craig. What happens? They drop it because it's extreme.
Yeah. Even gym junkies, they go even if they're sick, which is
no, but and then they stop for a big time. So that theory,
they're exhausted.
Of everything in moderation and the middle way Buddhists. When Peter says 1%, and you've said it before, like about that, you know, awakened or whatever. You know, if you could get a few percent of the 99% explaining that the middle way is okay, then, you know, it would help a lot of, you know,
Perfectionists.
Well, a lot of people.
Is there a lot written about that middle way?
To operate in the middle way.
What did you say?
Because you know how I like to then go and intellectualize and study it. But it's really interesting because I am all or none, 100%, always have been, because of cause and conditions I now understand, and you know. But I'm totally all or none, and the reason I'm leaving Sejuna is that I can't have it the way I want it there, because SA Health totally sucks and has let me down. But maybe there was a middle way. But I don't want that middle way. I don't want to be a part of it. So, but it is really interesting concept. I mean, it's not it's more than a concept. It's a, you know, it's a really sensible.
Ultimately, it works out to be just the truth. It's reality.
And there's lots written on it.
There's heaps written on it.
It mainly from a Buddhist tradition, or is there a lot out there about just?
Yeah, I mean, it comes through in all traditions. The West has lots of traditions, but in the West, a lot of these theories, one person says one thing or one person says another thing, and it's sort of left up to you to decide which way is right. Whereas in the East, the Buddha discovered this is the way. He actually enlightened. And so if you do trust him, and of course there's no reason why you should trust him, but if you do come to find that this is the way and you do trust him, it's sort of more clear because it's more written from someone who's awakened. Whereas in the West, there's a lot of very good critical thinkers. They're not actually awakened, so they're you know, their books come across convincingly, but so do people who will write a book on nihilism or on the soul. You know, there's authors I'm sure that you could read and say, yeah, well, clearly from this book the soul exists, because they would anyway. So there's stuff written, and there's stuff written in Hinduism as well, in the Advaita Vedanta and stuff like that.
But even that, like your example, is in the middle. See, cause and effect. You're starting to second guess yourself. Oh, if they did this, I could have stayed.
No, I'm not.
No. When you just said then, maybe if they did it differently. I'm not saying that you want to go back, but that middle way is like you had your idea how you wanted it to look, and they had theirs. So that's not a middle way, is it? I'm not criticising. I'm just saying.
The same thing's happening in my workplace. There's things I don't like. It's just a complete change now. So you can resist it, or you can find the middle way. You find that acceptance in the middle, that you have to be within that things you do like and what you don't like. There'll always be that ebb and flow, and you want to keep doing what you love. I have to sit in that level of acceptance.
The Dalai Lama says something like, "Why worry? If something's wrong and you can change it, then change it.
Yeah.
And if something's not wrong and you can't change it, then there's no
Because
point in worrying."
you have choice and you have freedom.
So you're saying you're happy to accept the things that you cannot change.
Yeah.
Or you have a choice to go.
You have to everywhere, like even
That's
here,
balance.
like,
You're into the balance.
Yeah.
Balance
there's a
is being
famous
not
Christian
the
Yeah.
liberal
Yeah.
balance.
God
bless
grant me, grant me the
grant
serenity.
me the serenity
Yes,
to
accept the
what I
things
can't.
I cannot change,
change.
courage to change the things I
But
can,
then
and the
Denise
wisdom
and
to
I were
what
just
is.
having
And the wisdom to know the difference. or something like that.
Denise and I were just having a quick discussion saying how important it is for Denise to do things that she is happy doing. That's her philosophy.
Yeah.
And that's a great philosophy.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
everyone gets that luxury,
I'm with you.
but that's another choice in life. Like Trudy could say, well, like in her situation, Trudy's saying, there are things I don't like, I'll accept the middle way. Another choice is to say, suck it up, I'm going to try and find something that I'm happy.
So we break
hard.
apart
With anything,
actions
yes.
and
Yes.
selfing, okay? And hopefully we can do the same actions but without the selfing, because the dukkha comes from selfing, and so that's where we need to pull it apart and drop this bit and see that you can still take action, but then you have the serenity to know that the outcome will be the outcome, and there are many causes and conditions that are causing the outcome. You're just one of those causes and conditions. So you accept, I do this, I make a proposal at work, and they may not accept it. And you're totally okay with that, because there are many other causes and conditions that are coming in. So blame is one example, but that's the one I've used because it's sort of more obvious, but you can do the same thing whenever any selfing is. Split it up into causes and conditions and notice that there is no self. There's no free will, there's no self. Actually the other thing is there are other causes. Actually, you sort of mentioned it, that even in the present moment, if I had come in and made a fuss about it, it would have had a ripple effect on other people.
And everyone, yeah.
So interestingly, me taking blame can actually be a cause for them taking blame or not taking blame or defending or whatever. So in this one we've got I didn't listen empathetically to my friend, but actually the friend is also a contributor of the cause to you listening emphatically, and you listening is a cause for them, the way they will adjust their speaking if they unconsciously know that you're not listening to them, type of thing. So there's many causes and conditions, many of which are going on simultaneously right now to accentuate maybe taking wrong action and then blame.
So you would do your head in if you're continually looking for those. So just put them in a basket.
Leave them, shut the door.
What is like
But it
having that big picture knowledge of what you're stating there would make life easier than going, okay, now what's my cause and what's...
Well,
But
I
also
suppose
having
it's
an
identifying
awareness
if
of
you realise something's causing you
Yeah.
dukkha, then you can
Exactly.
try and let it go. But if it's not really bothering you, you don't really need to
None of
investigate.
these things. You don't need to do any of this if you're already calm and happy.
And let it go.
And let it go.
Mm.
So the process is, doing something. I feel a sense of contraction. I can see a sense of fabrication. Therefore, I'm going to do a practice to see if I can let that go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've heard Pete talk about this causes and conditions one, and there's going to be many more, so you'll have a choice. By the end of the retreat, you'll have a whole plethora of choices. But you might say, the one that worked for me was this causes and conditions. So I'll break it up.
Gotcha.
I feel better now. I've returned back to equanimity. I've returned back to equanimity. Tick, you've done it. And then you just stay in that equanimity until next time selfing happens. It happens again. And you know selfing because it comes with dukkha. So you feel dukkha. So whenever you're not feeling 100%, you're like, well, that's dukkha. Now, what's happening? Apply a remedy, apply an antidote, no more dukkha. Good, keep going. So it's like that.
Mm.
And the more you do this, the more calm, the more obvious it becomes that whenever I was talking about these different religions and stuff like that. The thing I like about Buddha is he says, don't take my word for it just because I'm, venerated by other beings. That's the last thing you should do is take the teacher's word for it. Try it out for yourself. And he says, if you feel better, then probably it's working and you're going in the right direction. And if you feel worse, you're probably going in the wrong direction. And I love that. Because what could be more simple than that?
Mm-hmm.
If you feel calmer and you feel happier, then whatever you did was probably you should do more of. But if you feel pretty shitty afterwards, then maybe you should look at what you did and change it up. So I really love that. That just you use your own inner guide by how good or how bad you feel.
I see a little bit of irony here because, like at the end of the day, if we're just about absence of dukkha for the self, well, that's very ego driven.
Exactly.
Whereas really, if we had world sukha, but we can only get world sukha by individual sukha.
Yeah.
But who says my absence of dukkha is so important?
Well, because because you will also find that the one excellent way to get sukha is by helping others. That's, I say this in one of my other retreats. Again, I don't know why people don't remember this, but probably about 15 years ago, there was a spate of these real life television series about making people happy. So making the Smith family happy. Or they had one on making Parramatta happy. I think they took a suburb in Parramatta and because they did this survey in Parramatta. It could have been another place, but anyway, it might have been Ryde. I don't know, one of those places around there in Western Sydney was considered one of the most unhappiest places in Australia. So they did this documentary. Anyway, long story short, one of the things they did was they do this experiment where they just give someone $100 and they say, go into that supermarket and do random acts of kindness. And people go, oh, that's so stupid and made up, What am I supposed to do? It's up to you. You can do whatever you want. I'll just go and, I don't know, I'll go and buy someone flowers or whatever. And so anyway, they do this. And one of them buys flowers, one of them pays for someone's groceries, one of them actually buys a cup of coffee and has a conversation with this old guy. And all of them come back. He says, when you gave me the $100, I thought this was so lame and so stupid, but I just really feel good. Like, it's unbelievable how good I feel just by doing a random act of kindness to someone. So if you want sukha, one of the best ways is try to get sukha for other people. And
then it has a ripple effect, hopefully.
Well, hopefully it has a ripple effect. But also, one of the ways you'll find to get dukkha is to be, I'm only interested in my sukha. I don't care about Deb or, you know, try it for a while and you'll feel contracted. You know, you'll see them blaming you and you'll feel like, well, you know, because I rushed up and ate the bananas before everyone else did. So, you know, I got in there first. But actually, I don't feel very good because I know now that people think I'm greedy because I took, you know, one of the last remaining. You know, so that's where that answers your question, I hope, Kat.
Yeah, it does. Very, very well.
Very quickly, you'll find there is no such thing as selfishness if you are really truly wanting sukha. All right, so so we're trying to drop the self story. Now, again, there's this kind of middle way because it is true that sometimes a self story is helpful. Like when I have to plan for this retreat, I have to plan, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. Yeah? And even for taking responsibility, you know, just the mere fact of, well, I'm going to make sure that I remind Tash, and I'm sure Tash is thinking, right, I need to. So these self stories still play a role, even though you see through them. Okay? So again, it's this middle way. We don't go from, oh, I can see that self stories are the problem, so I'm never going to have a self story again. That's another extreme. But what I will say with all of these is because we live, most of us live 100% in this extreme, going to the other extreme isn't so bad for a while, because what we want to do is we want to get ourselves away from that. Yeah? So sometimes you might go that far, but that's okay, and then you sort of come back to the middle eventually. So for a while, it is good to think, you know, there is no self, complete an illusion. There's nothing wrong with that for a little while, even though it's an extreme, and you know that you have to come back to the middle. All right.
4 people in this room have partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the challenge, is in partnership, marriage, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because that's where it seems that competition.
Exactly.
I would have thought it would help relationships.
It would help or wouldn't.
Yeah, for those in partnerships, I think that's a value added. That if you're working on yourself to drop things that you stress about that don't need stressing about, surely that enhances your relationship.
Well, yeah, the triggers would be there.
Even if you're the only one doing it, because it has a rippling effect.
Well, close relationships have an effect of accentuating whatever's going on. So if you're creating stories, it can accentuate it. But if you're both working together, it can actually also accentuate the dropping of it as well.
Yeah,
what about
that's
in
what
this
I'm
case?
getting at.
Everyone here is the one of the partners is working on it. What do you do about that? You're working it together. Yes, that makes sense. But what about?
Well, you can only control your own story.
That's
You
right.
can't control the other person's story. So you just have to accept and then hope it doesn't get to a point where it's
hard work.
they can't control their story. I don't know.
That's hard work.
Yeah.
Hard work.
No, I mean that's quite valid, isn't it? That like your partner, like that's an imbalance.
But aren't you always in balance? So don't you always I think that I always think of in my relationship, one of us is always going to be down and one of us is going to be up. So you've got to drag that person or they're dragging you, or you're never going to be on the same plateau. So you're always either learning from one another or having space from one another or whatever it is. It's never going to be the same.
My gosh. Are you in a relationship?
I just think that's the best way to be.
You are?
Yeah.
This is probably the reason I'd stay clear of relationships. All this argy-bargy
You've got to
business.
find the right match though, because you can make it.
Yeah, you've got to accept that you're not that person. You can't control that person. You don't own them.
And then you support each other and you ebb and flow.
Yeah.
right partner.
And
right.
I agree with
It
Ray.
is.
You can only ever really know and be responsible for yourself.
Absolutely.
Because
You don't own anybody else, even if you're in a relationship.
No,
Yeah.
You don't.
So
Yeah.
I can't tell my wife she's telling stories like she
No.
would. So I have to just accept that and let her
Yeah.
go and control my own story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then let her. She's her, and I just control my story. And
that's
and
right.
letting go of your kids is sometimes even
oh,
harder.
that's even harder.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
That's
But
ridiculous.
they are,
Yeah.
you know, you can't control them.
No.
They'll do what they do.
Mhm. All right, I've done that one, but I haven't done the other one.
All right.
You've done the hard one.
I'm in no category.
You're in no category.
I'm in
So
the,
we've talked about
the unknown.
one way to deal with the sort of that blame is a kind of it's like an ego coming up within us. It's an energy coming up within us, and we've talked about dissipating that. So we're going to have a little break, and after the break, we're going to talk about how even the self itself is an illusion, and we're going to start off with an intriguing topic called Chandrakirti and the Unfindable Chariot. So that's the
What's that
title.
name? Chandrakirti.
Chandrakirti
Oh, okay,
and
Chandrakirti.
and his unfindable chariot is
Oh
the
my
topic of
goodness.
our next talk.
All right.
So we can stop that there.
So how could you bring your partner along with that subject? That's weird.
So
She
how
does,
about
Would
but
you
I'm
like-
okay with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I'm happy to
Tell your wife, what did you do on the thing? Oh, we checked out the subject on blah, blah,
Chandrakirti
blah.
and the unfindable chariot?
what
So-
sort of thing your wife's worried about us? Worried about the content of the course?